Welcome to the Bleep Bulimia podcast with Daou, Family Constellation Intuitive Medium. Hi everyone, I am Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia, and today I'm so excited to have Daou with us today. She is a Family Constellation Facilitator, Intuitive Medium, and she's also the podcast host of Heal with Kat, which is really interesting. I highly recommend you go listen to her podcast. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Lorianne. I'm so happy to be here and just honored to share just a little bit of wisdom I have and hopefully can support your community.
Well, I wouldn't say just a little bit of wisdom. I've watched a couple of your podcasts and there's a lot there. Uh, so I'm just going to start with asking what encouraged you to move towards this becoming a family constellation facilitator?
Yeah, I'm happy to share vulnerably and honestly the journey that I was on at a young age. And I found this work at 28 years old. I was post-divorce. I was working for my family's business. I was really struggling with autoimmune disease. I didn't know that I had it at the time. Endometriosis was one of the few that I have that I was battling. And I was really struggling in my life with my sense of self-worth. I guess the best way I can say it is on the outside, my life looked really cool. I was working with influencers and celebrities, and my family had this big wine brand, and I was doing wine dinners all over the world and doing events and like just living a really cool life. And like I was finally divorced from this toxic relationship, and like on the outside, somebody would have looked at my life and gone, man, like she's finally getting it together. And on the inside, I was like, where the hell am I going? Like, what is life and what am I doing here? And one of the things I talk really openly about is how I was struggling with suicidal ideation, depression, and anxiety during this time as well. I lacked a connection to my purpose. I didn't know why I was on this earth. I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know how. And it felt too big of a purpose to even touch at the time. So I went to my cousin and I said, I need a life coach. I need someone to help me figure out my life because I don't know what I'm doing. And she said, I don't know a life coach, but I know this woman named Carrie Gagne. She's a family constellation therapy facilitator. She's also a medium and intuitive. She said, don't Google family constellation because it's too complicated to Google. Don't do any research on it. And she even said, I don't like FCT, which is how I'll abbreviate it because it's quite long. I don't like FCT. It bothers me, like it's too heavy for me, but I think you might like it. So I reached out and I booked 6 months of coaching without even knowing Carrie, and I was just so desperate for help. And I got into this first or second session and I knew my whole life had changed. I knew that there was a part of me in this that I had been searching for, that the way that my brain works, the way that I feel about things, the way that I carry the family trauma, it could be explained through this one modality. And at that point, a lot of my life made sense for the first time.
That's really interesting. It's kind of weird. I know I'm kind of like on this chat GPT thing. And I was fascinated by what you had to say. So I went on and I asked a question and I said, what would be the best questions to ask her? Well, there's a whole list of them, but one that I really did like, um, which was really interesting. There were two of them. You've been open about your experience with eating disorders and body dysmorphia. Can you share a bit about your story and how struggles shaped you, how you are today? But there's also this, was there a moment or turning point when you realized your eating disorder was connected to something deeper, perhaps even generational? I just find that fascinating because I've felt the same way, and you brought this up.
Mm.
Would you be
Yeah,
able to
so to
answer?
answer,
Those are big questions, but I
I
couldn't quite phrase them properly. So I went to my like, hello, please help.
yeah, so repeat the first question for me. I want to make sure I answer it really intentionally.
Um, okay, so the question was, you've been open about your experiences with eating disorders and body dysmorphia. Can you share a bit of your story of how those struggles shaped who you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be honest and vulnerable about that. And I want to kind of weave in that ancestral question that you asked me. It's interesting because in family constellation therapy, one of the teachers that I've studied, her name is Susie Tucker, she talks about the languages of the family. So sometimes there's these unconscious languages that we all kind of share, like a commonality of things that we talk about that are acceptable. And really what we're getting at is, do we belong or do we not belong? And the beauty of belonging is that we belong in our family systems no matter if we fit in. Brene Brown talks about how belonging and fitting in are not the same thing. You belong to your family system because you were born into it. Even if you die early, you still belong to that family system. You have that DNA connection to your family. But whether we fit in or not, that's a whole other story. And so sometimes we fit in through the languages of our family, meaning everybody in the family system has an acceptable language around eating disorders. So everyone, it's acceptable to talk about counting calories or checking out your body in the mirror 24/7, or you're celebrated for eating a certain way or looking a certain way, or all of these types of subconscious things that we feel and see and hear in our family system. We think because we're children, we're young, usually most of the time that we experience this, we think that's how everyone works. That's what we do to belong to our family. That's how we find connection. So really my experience with my eating disorder, I don't work with blame, shame, judgment, or criticism. I just don't find that to be a very productive way to work with our family systems. But I do think it's important to lean into understanding. Once we can understand what our family's languages that they grew up in were and their family, then we start to understand why they thought it was okay to create that language in us too. So the languages I grew up with in my family system were celebrate diets. Everybody was on a diet all the time. I mean, I was encouraged to be on a diet from a very young age. I was in fifth grade and I was something insinuated that my body would not be good enough. There was a lot of comparison energy. And so in fifth grade, I would wake up at 5 a.m. I'd run 1 mile on the treadmill. I would count like my calories and like restrict my food in fifth grade. And, I was going through puberty at the time, and my body was changing. My friends' bodies were changing. It's a preteen. I was 10 years old when I got my period. I mean, it's a very sensitive time in a woman's life to be a preteen and to go through puberty. And then you've got this eating disorder component. And so when I look back on my 12 years or 12 and a half-ish years of an eating disorder, it was only me wanting to be good enough. It was only me wanting to belong to my family. It was only me wanting to connect with them and get love because that is the language of the family. When you diet, we celebrate you. When you do this, yeah, it's big stuff. Now,
That's
yeah, and by the way, I'm 35, almost 35 now. And I've been in remission with my eating disorder since I went to an outpatient facility when I was 24. And even though the act of the eating disorder was gone, the restricting and the binging and all of that, I had bulimia for a very, very small stint in the early days of it, in around 11, 12, 13. But even though the act was gone, the belief system was still there. And so I've had to work on for the last 10 years, changing the belief system in my head. I don't need to celebrate how many miles I walked around the lake today just to feel good about myself. I'm good enough if I lay on the couch all day. I belong to my family if I do nothing. I'm lovable when I do what feels good for me. We can get into the nuances about bulimia and kind of the self-harm aspect of it, and it kind of gets really deep into that. But yeah, that's my experience with the eating disorder.
okay. First of all, may I say, I am blown away. I had the opposite experience to you. Mom was a great cook. If you didn't eat everything on the plate, you were basically you had to sit till you finished everything on the plate since I was a little kid. I mean, I used to fall asleep, wake up, and still have to finish what was in front of me. I'd fall asleep at the table, I would. And I never instilled that on my children. I never instilled you have to finish everything on your plate. And then it became like if I went to visit mom, like I would not be able to say no to food, right? And if I said no to food, it was an insult. So my thing was not dieting. Mine was the opposite, like overeating. And I didn't want to overeat. I didn't want to. But then there was also that nurturing factor. I loved mom's food. So when I was bulimic, I would make food that made me felt nurtured by mom. Like it's a psychological, and you're absolutely right. When you're coming through it, I've been 14 years. So it's not really that far away because I had it for 30 and ongoing. I mean, little snippets of like when I was pregnant, I never ever, because I was so, and here's another weird thing. I'm so concerned about the life inside of me that I took time off, but I wasn't concerned about my life, obviously, because then once that was done, I was back to being bulimic, so interesting thought there too, the huge concern. But then what would my kids do if I'm not there? Like all that is such a ridiculous mindset that I was in my 30s. I was your age when this was going on. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's bizarre. But yes, I was opposite you. Oh no, diet was not in our words. It was my sister, my oldest sister, who taught me what diet meant. And then that was the end of that. That's when I ended up becoming bulimic.
Well,
But
actually, what's interesting that you bring that up is I was raised in a Middle Eastern family. And so there was a
yeah,
language of eat all the food that grandmother makes you. And
yeah,
so actually what you're bringing up for my experience as well is there was this very extreme eat eat food, it's delicious, like don't miss a single bite of your meal, binge, like it's so good because it fills you up, and we can get into the psychological and the nervous system component of that. But
yeah.
then also there was this like shame experience that the family went through. Oh my God, I can't believe we ate all of that. Now we have to rid ourselves of this shame.
Wow.
And it comes through the restricting, it comes through the bulimia, it comes through the control patterns that happen through the eating disorder. So I totally relate to a component of your story as well. And that's, I think that's the beauty of all of our stories is that even though they may look a little bit different, there's like these through lines, that kind of move through all of us where we have these kind of shared themes that we all have.
Absolutely. I just love that. Um, so I want to know more because we're talking about all this, but we're talking about bulimia. But I am now more interested in your whole family constellation facilitator. I know that you're a big, big fan of Dr. Brian Weiss. You bring him up a few times. Just give us an idea. Like, so I believe in past lives. I kind of do. I'm not sure. I mean, I was telling you when I met my ex-husband, when I saw him, I went to my friends and I said, I just met my future husband. I already knew that. So my future person was telling me that. Um, and then I also met somebody who had the same last name as my grandmother, and he thought he knew me, and I thought I knew him, and never have our paths crossed at all. So there's weird things that have happened to me where I meet people that I feel like, yeah, I knew you. Must have been another life because it's not here. Even my ex-husband, I knew his eyes. I felt like I know you, but never did our paths cross, except for maybe Expo 67 way back when, but we were like little kids that might have walked across each other and looked at each other in the eyes. That's it. So I want to know more about that because I'm really excited about that. And I'm really interested in that. A lot of us think about past lives, but you're also talking about future.
Yeah, and if you look at it in the realm of quantum physics, they all exist at the same time. They're all existing now. And with my work with family constellations, people do want to know, well, I know there's an ancestral component to this, but could there be a past life reason why I'm struggling with an eating disorder? Could there be a past life reason for why I'm having themes of the eating disorder and it's coming out as an eating disorder, control or shame or victim energy, perpetrator energy, like all these things. And it totally could be when we're working within family constellation therapy, because we're working within an energy field that is quantum in nature, it's a morphogenic field. if we're healing it for you, technically we're healing it for all of the past lives and the future lives. So everyone's getting the healing at once. But I took a really deep fascination to past life because I love to geek out about the science of spirituality. I'm a huge fan of both the physical and the spiritual. I love Joe Dispenza. Like, I just love understanding the brain. And so when I get to meld the creativity with the analytical part of me, like that's where my neurons just start like exploding. And so that's why I loved Brian Weiss because he talks about you in the present moment and then the other parts of you that exist. And when you look at spirituality or quantum, lives, I mean, you are living at the same time as your past lives are living at the same time as your current life. And so there's really no separation. I mean, that's what quantum entanglement explains in quantum theory, which is that you're still entangled with past life you, and you're healing for all of those things. So I've done like 3 or 4 past life regressions, which I did a podcast episode on about my body image, which was really, really interesting because I was just thinking about this last week. I've uncovered some bodily traumas that I was subconsciously searching to heal in that episode that I share about my most recent past life regression. And it's been almost a year since that time, and I'm just now uncovered this life physical trauma that I went through. But man, does it mirror things that I've been through in past lives before. So I don't know if you want me to go into any other like specific details about it, because I can totally like share and talk about this all day long, but it's a really interesting topic.
Well, here's the thing. So it was really interesting because I watched, there was a podcast that you sent me to through Podmatch. Love Podmatch, by the way. I do have to say something about that. Without them, I wouldn't have all of these wonderful guests. And then I went to that episode, and then I went, no, I want to see the one that you're saying, number 48, I think it was. And then I went to 48, and then 48, you said, and then you're going to have to see this one. And I just kept
It's like a
going.
Goosebumps book. I'm taking you
Like,
through
okay,
it.
I want to hear about that one. And so, and that's what's so interesting about it is that your podcasts do speak to different things, and it wasn't just the eating disorder. I was curious about that, obviously, because I wanted to know what I could bring forth with you speaking about. But like, yeah, the past lives, like, and sometimes I think, was I my grandmother because I was born exactly 6 years after the day that she died on a Sunday, right? So, and it was weird. And my mother was going through a serious depression. The other thing you talked about, if your parents have depression, are you prone to them? My dad had anxiety. I did not know this until like, he was like later on in life. I think, maybe, I mean, he's passed away 2 years ago, but it wasn't much before he passed away that I knew that I found out that he struggled with anxiety. So all these things that you're talking about, like, is it, and how do you break it? And my daughter is about your age. She's 31. And she says, I want to break all these patterns of the family because there has been, like you, we don't say anything about, we don't like it's not who it is, but there has been trauma, definitely trauma for my daughter, for me, for my mother, for my father, possibly, but of course they don't talk about it. My sons, I know, I mean, a divorce is always traumatic for kids, right? So, um, and breaking those traumas of that is something I'd be very interested in because I do believe eating disorders are quite connected with that. Like it's a way of dealing with traumas and like just like alcoholism you were talking about as well. You were saying drugs, alcohol, eating disorders. So there's where you have the platform for that one. Sorry for that big dissertation, but I really think that's important because I love what you say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely dive into the generational aspects of the eating disorder, and we can talk about it from a very 30,000 foot perspective because the thing with FCT is the foundational schools of thought that I learned are that they're foundational, but every family is so nuanced and everyone's experience. I mean, I learn something new from every single client every single time because every single family system is so nuanced and so different. And also, you bring up a really fascinating thing to point out is that past generations they hid their trauma and they did not believe that their trauma was trauma and they did not feel the freedom to speak about it. And so I really think that, I mean, I see this, I work mostly with the millennial generation, so I can only speak from that perspective, but we're all talking about it now. And that is triggering for other generations. So it's like we're in this really weird place where we're like, we need to talk about it. We want to move through it. We want to process it. We want to break the cycles. And then getting the permission to do that is like, or feeling the permission to do that is also like another really big step in the process. So I love that you're embracing that for your kids because it's such a gift that you're giving them.
Um, I really think you should write a book. Because of the way that you speak about Brian Weiss, I think that you're very capable of doing it yourself.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think that there's a lot you speak to. What I feel intuitively is that you've gone through a lot, and you don't, and you said you don't want to shame anyone by speaking about who and what. I think that that's beautiful. But I also want you to speak to your Heal with Cat podcast. Like I said, what inspired you to start the podcast? Obviously, I know it's in line with what you're doing, but getting out there and telling the world about your life.
Oh, thank you so much. I actually am in the process of writing a book right now, and it's all about the topic of belonging. I talk a lot about the transition we go from feeling like the black sheep into being more of a cycle breaker. I think the black sheep has a really negative connotation, and it's kind of like a low vibrational place to be. I was definitely stuck in that for a long time, and once I realized through this work that I could be more of a cycle breaker, then I started to feel empowered and free and lighter and more connected to love, which I think is the ultimate healer. So I thank you for that. That's a very validating thought because I'm in the process of it. It takes a long time, but it's in the
You have a
works.
title yet?
Not yet. No, I'm literally in like the beginning stages right now. I'm in the process of also creating 40 plus meditations on Insight Timer to be released in the next month for people who want to work on different aspects of the ancestral healing journey and how it shows up in blocks as well. So, yeah, that's coming soon too. It's a different way I'm channeling. But the Heal with Cat podcast is it's I had a podcast before this one when I worked for my family's business. It was called The Thirsty. It was a wine podcast about wine and pop culture. And I realized I love talking. My mom laughs. I said my first words at 6 months old. And the doctor was like, what the heck? And my mom's like, and you haven't stopped since. But and now I'm trying to monetize it and like help people with it. So starting a podcast was just like a really natural thing for me. I realized how much I loved it when I was in the wine business and actually how I had kind of a knack for it. So then when I left the wine business and started getting into this space, it was just like a natural like inkling to start the podcast. And what started with focusing on just family constellation therapy, that really took me about a year and a half into the podcast. Then I realized I had talked so much about family constellation therapy. I didn't have anything else to talk about. So then I transitioned and then I joined Podmatch. And for the last probably I don't know, 30 episodes plus, because I took a little break in between that time. I've been switching the podcast over to being more about something that I received this word called psychosolic evolution. So it's the psyche and the soul on this evolutionary journey together and how we do that. And so I have people come on the podcast who talk about things like epigenetics. Today's episode was about the father wound. I'm having someone come on about the mother wound. So we're talking about psychology and spirituality and how that fits in with our evolutionary process. So it's kind of the podcast is going through a transition right now.
That sounds really interesting.
It's
Yeah, the
fun.
maternal and paternal one, that's yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely they're very two different entities in our lives. So
Yeah.
um this has been absolutely wonderful. I do definitely need you to let me know when your book comes out.
Oh.
And also I need you to tell our listeners where to find you. Uh But before we do that, I think that I forgot to ask you this. I really need to know, what is your process in regards to what you do with this family constellation facilitation?
Like as in how a session works or like how you do it?
Yeah, because I think they're probably sitting there because I probably haven't gone to that point saying, okay, well, we'll talk about it, but we won't tell you how it works. So I think that's important if you
Oh,
can
no
do that
worries.
for me.
Well, sessions with me are 2 hours long, and I love working within a longer container. There's some family constellation sessions that people do that are like 25 minutes. I have not gotten there. I love the intimate connection, the vulnerability. I love really getting to know the people that I work with. So my sessions are 2 hours, and the first 45 minutes to an hour is me just getting to know the client, or me talking to the client about what their blocks are. Are they feeling blocked in romantic relationships, in their food or relationships with food or their weight? Are they feeling like they're struggling with a certain person in the family system? Are they struggling with feeling worthy of money or their career? Like ancestral blocks show up in our everyday lives, and sometimes we think that we throw all these tools at it except the ancestral part. And so when people come to me, they're usually like, I've tried everything and I don't know what to try anymore. And I'm like, you're probably entangled in some family trauma that's been unhealed and unacknowledged, so we can work through it together. So the first hour, we're just kind of talking about what's coming up for you. What are the people connected to this story? Where are the places, the themes, the experiences? Like, what is the story here? Then in the middle of the session, I guide the client through a very quick visualization and breath work. It's like 2 minutes long, not even. But what we're doing there is we're opening up that quantum morphogenic field. It's this energy field. So this work is deeply spiritual in its nature. The founder of this work, Bert Hellinger, he didn't understand what it was in the 60s and 70s, but he called it a phenomenology, something you can't understand how it works, but it's a phenomenon of what it is. We open the field, and I have you stand on pieces of paper that are just numbered. You don't know what they are, only I do. And the reason for that is because I want you to go into this experience with no preconceived notions. So if you have stuff with mom, I don't want you to stand on mom's paper and know it's mom and then already have judgment about it. I want you to stand on each paper, and what you're doing on that paper is you are quite literally intuiting, channeling, speaking as mom's paper or dad's paper or sister's paper or your inner child's paper. Remember, time does not exist in this space. We can stand on a paper and experience anything. What you're doing as you're standing on those papers is you're telling me exactly what I need to know to help you shift the story and create healing. You come off the papers, we talk about it. That's usually the moment in the session where people are like, "Oh my God, how did I know all of that? How did I do that? Maybe I do believe in spirituality. Maybe there is a God out there. Like, what is going on? This is so crazy." And it's the coolest part of the session because everything starts to click at that point. Once we've decided how we're going to move forward with the healing statements, I have you rearrange the papers. And then I have you speak to each paper, to mom, to dad, to whoever we're working with. That is the most cathartic part of the session because you're usually saying the words you wish you could say to that person. But because you're in an energy field, there is healing happening between both of you. So we're speaking the healing statements. We find peace with each person as much as we can. And then you work with your future self. We do a little work there, and then you're done. So there's a lot that happens in a session. This is why I like 2 hours, because we do not waste a second of these sessions. But the kind of healing and transformation that you can do in just one session is incredible.
Wow. And so, question is, obviously there are some people who would want to return as well. Would the next session be as like 2 hours as well, or is it really the first hour? But is it best suited 2 hours for any time you come back?
I love to just to do the 2 hours. And if we end early, then we end early. And I always offer, like, do you want to connect with anyone? Do you want me to pull some cards? Can I give you an intuitive guidance? Like I don't leave you hanging if we only do like an hour and a half. You know, there's always something to fill the time, but some people are like, no, that was pretty powerful and it was, an hour and 20 minutes. Like, I'm good, thank you. So we just kind of leave it open, but usually people will come see me the first time and then they need like a month or so to like digest everything that happened. So on average, I see people once a month. Some people I see for like 3 or 4 sessions and they're good. And then there's some people I've been seeing about once, maybe one every 1 to 2 months for like the last year and a half. So it just kind of depends on where people are at. I'm actually exclusively on Zoom because of all the medications I was on in my 20s. Actually, my first antidepressant was at 16 until 28. My stomach and my body started to shut down. A lot of the autoimmune that I was going through was related to trauma as well. So inherited trauma and also trauma that I experienced in this life. But yeah, my body, my liver stopped working, my gallbladder stopped working, my stomach stopped working properly. Like it was really bad. I could get into the bio what was happening in my body, but it might be TMI for some people. But yeah, my body was like really shutting down. And on top of that, I had these crazy painful endometriosis periods that would leave me pretty much incapable of moving for like 24 hours. So, as an my because of all of that, my body stopped putting out gastric juices to break down my food. So when I was eating, it wasn't properly digesting and it was staying stuck in my system. So I
Oh
wouldn't go
my
to the
God.
bathroom for like a week. It was really, really bad. So
That can be very
that
septic.
it was horrible. I was
Yeah.
inflamed. I had cystic acne. My hair was falling out. I was getting depressed again. It was really bad. And I tried to like put on this really strong exterior. Like I worked out. I like ate the healthiest you could even imagine, and I was still really, really sick. And so what I've realized is that SIBO was the entry point for realizing what was actually going on. And about a month ago, I got diagnosed with Epstein-Barr, and that is really what has been the root cause of the Hashimoto's, the endometriosis, the gut issues, like everything. The root is the Epstein-Barr that I got when I was 5 years old, ironically.
Epstein-Barr.
It's a virus. It's like mono. It's under the mono family. And you
Okay.
can get it from someone else that has Epstein-Barr. But basically, I got it when I was 5. It manifested as scarlet fever. I then proceeded to get strep throat like 2 to 3 times a year from that age until like my preteen years when I hit puberty, and then it kind of stopped. Then it manifested as strep B in college, and then things started backing up into my gut, my liver,
Oh
my
my
gallbladder. So
goodness.
it was, yeah, and the medications were just stripping any nutrients away from my body. And the birth control, I actually wouldn't get a period. Like I was on seasonique, so I'd only get a period 3 times a year or 4 times a year. So I was on birth control nonstop. And that was just stripping my body of anything that I needed to feel like like full nutrients wise, which then triggered the Hashimoto's, which like it's been a whole thing. It's been a whole thing. It's been a crazy journey.
Wow. Actually, it's funny you say that. I was never regular, and I was went to the doctor and I said, I heard that birth control is good because it regulates your period. And it's not good not to have your period. And I get it maybe once every 4 months, 6 months, year. It was like that. And he goes, no, he says, you're not going on birth control. If you're that, like, he says, you're going to put your ovaries into a coma. And I was even with my ex, and the first one, like, we never used birth control because he told me I was likely never going to get pregnant. And then, like, 9 months later, here we go. Hello, I'm pregnant. But I got on herbal teas and herbal teas. Then I got off the herbal teas because they were like, ew, I had them when I was pregnant, don't feel like them anymore. But then I wanted another baby 3 years later. So I went back on my herbal teas and I got pregnant again.
Oh my
It was like
gosh.
the herbal tea, like, and FemMend, this little like nutrient, little package, normal thing. And I went back on that and I got pregnant again. And then I got pregnant again, and then that was it. Um, can you please tell our listeners where to find you exactly?
Yeah, you've named it. YouTube is the best and easiest place to go. It's just Heal with Cat Pod. I can send you the links for that. For those who are on social media, I'm on Instagram and my handle there is cat_DAOU. And if anyone is on TikTok, that's probably the number one platform that I have. And it's Heal with Cat Pod, just like YouTube. So, and then again, you're the first person I've shared it with. I haven't shared this with anyone yet, but come May, not when this episode's coming out, but come May, I'm launching 40 plus meditations and frequency activations on Insight Timer. It'll just be under Cat Daou. And they're meditations for people in any phase of life. We'll be looking at, like I mentioned, these meditations, there's going to be some segmented for romantic relationships, but the ancestral healing piece, there will be food and weight and body image stuff on there as well. So like I look at it from kind of the block perspective, so that those are all going to be free. So if anyone wants to go at any time, I have so many free resources for people to access. So FCT doesn't have to be the first place you go.
So just a question, you said Insight Timer?
Yes, it's a meditation app.
All right. Well, this was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate you. Curious. I just might look up. Okay. Can you give us an idea of how much do you charge for a 2 hour session?
They're $300.
Okay.
And then
This-
I do ancestral intuitive readings, which is a place that people usually will start with. There's $75 for 35 minutes, but you get so much in those 35 minutes. Basically just channeling like ancestrally what's coming up. And then I also have another free offering that's called the Cycle Breaker Quiz, and that's free on my website, and I can send you the link for that as well. And that
Yeah.
basically is a quiz you take to understand what role you play in your family system, and then how you can understand the ancestral impact. Because I look at the client as a mirror, a reflection of what happened in the family system. So I don't start with the ancestors and go forward. I start with the client and go back, because usually you're mirroring things from the family system. So if you can understand your role, if you're the rebel, the caretaker, the hyper independent, the parentified child, or the comedian, you can understand your ancestral trauma very clearly just from that. And I send you a ton of free resources with that too.
Oh, beautiful. If you can do that, I'd really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's the thing is like I know today's economy, like I watch the news, I see what's going on. I talk with clients every day, like I'm not blind to the fact that most people can't just drop $300 for 2 hour sessions. That's why I have so many free resources that I'm dropping, because I don't think it should be inaccessible.
That's beautiful. Thanks again, Kat. You've been
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you
Thanks,
so much for
Lily.
being here on my podcast.
Thank
And
you.
we will, I'm sure that you're going to be back on. I really want to know about your book when it comes out. So you're going to let us know, right?
I will. I promise I'll let you know. Thank you so much for your time too. It was such a gift to talk to you.
Thank you so much. All
Yeah.
right. Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.